Hi, Mrs. Cavelli. Ryan Jardine. We've met.
Of course. I'm so sad for what has happened. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
It's my grandfather's funeral.
Sorry for your loss.
Oh, that's okay.
So you're the grandson. So how are you enjoying Brooklyn so far?
I like it a lot. We have much more space. It's great. It's a lot more peaceful than Manhattan.
You know, you're gonna like this neighborhood. It's become a very bohemian area. Did you draw this? Wow, Jake. It's actually getting good.
Can't tell you how happy I am that Jake has a new friend. You have a great kid there, but I guess you know that.
My parents are married. They just don't live together.
I don't understand.
Me neither. Your dad ain't good at acting?
He's not that successful or anything.
Maybe you can give me a couple pointers, because I want to be an actor when I grow up.
The genesis of acting is seeing, understanding what makes behavior. I did it again.
I did it again.
You did it again.
You did it
You
again.
did it.
You.
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 You did it.
You did it.
You did it.
I didn't do it.
Get out of my face.
Get out of my face.
Get out of my
Get
face.
out of my
Get
face.
out of my
Get
face. Get out of my face.
Ryan hasn't made any money in years.
That's not my problem.
We need the shop to cover its rent.
Our parents are involved in a business matter. It's getting ugly, so they're taking it out of us.
Tony, you need to go home now.
One of the hardest things to realize when you're a child is that your parents are people too. You understand that? They care about things. They make mistakes. They try to do what they think is the right thing to do. Does any of what I'm saying make any sense to you? Say something, Jake. Say something!
Gee, thanks, Dad. That's a very encouraging story.
Thanks, everybody. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. Ira, congratulations on another wonderful, wonderful film. And guys, congratulations for being a part of it and putting in some incredible performances.
Thank you.
This movie makes me cry, so thanks. I love a good cry. But what I love about your films is that the thing that makes you cry is not someone dying, is not something humongous. It is the sort of just the small moment of reflection that people have and sort of getting through what many could consider a minor dilemma that is a big problem in this moment. And we were talking about this in the green room, which is that how do you know when you have enough that is to keep an audience's attention, to keep it relatable, to keep things moving for an audience, especially now when so often people, I think, underrate an audience's intelligence and attention span?
Well, I think it comes from a certain honoring of individual stories. And you say it's a small moment, but it's cataclysmic to the people who are involved. The 5 characters that the film is actually focused on. The film is about 2 boys who become best friends as their parents, 2 of which are played by these 2, become enemies. And it's really about the tension between adult life and childhood. And to me, there's nothing greater than that. I think I get a lot of permission in a way to tell a story like this by the art films that I've loved as a growing up and in terms of loving cinema. So a film like The 400 Blows, for example, you could say nothing happens in that film, but a boy goes through life. But somehow, if it's done with enough detail and attention to character, it resonates and it continues to.
Is The 400 Blows an influence for you on this film? Or is that like one of those movies where when you're making a movie about children and you like art film of some kind, there's just no way to not at least go back and watch The 400 Blows as you're starting to write this?
You know, both. It is an influence because really what that film captured was the kind of beauty and the joy of childhood, and I think cinema is particularly able to do that. The camera can really capture something about kids and their that nothing else can. I also, when I was casting this film, and we have two amazing kids, Michael Barbieri and Theo Taplitz, I thought about the casting of Jean-Pierre Léaud and in The 400 Blows, and I was aware that the important thing was not to find one kid out of a million, but to find two kids that we would really remember, and that's quite true with these two actors. They're unforgivable, forgettable. They're unforgivable somehow also, but they're unforgettable.
No, they're wonderful in the film. Greg, you've worked with some amazing directors over the course of your career, and I think you've worked with, immediately I think of James L. Brooks and his humanity that comes with As Good as It Gets and all of his films. I'm wondering if you see any resemblance with working with Ira. Obviously, different kinds of storytellers, but I think both of them very much interested in the humanity and the things in between the lines.
Yeah, and I'm not going to let him be really modest because he tries to do that. And the truth is, he did cast two amazing boys in this film who are great, no doubt about it. But there's many directors who have done things like that, but you have to put those kids into the right environment, and you have to find the right moment and kind of create the safety with which to express themselves the way they do in this movie. So some of the great little moments that you'll find in this film are sort of wonderfully choreographed and kind of set up, and you did it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's all casual. I mean, I think you really have to know.
Well, don't brag that much. I didn't mean to go that crazy. I just no. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think for me, I grew up reading a lot of novels, and I think you learn certain instincts as a storyteller from reading literature and films as well, but also that what is Henry James but films about small moments? Books about small moments that somehow feel very large. And I think I trust that in the story.
Well, I would imagine in terms of creating an environment for the children actors who are completely new to this, the two of you had a hand in that as well in working with Ira. I'm sure the three of you had conversations about how to possibly get the best performances out of these kids who had never done this before and how you guys can work with them on set as well. Is that true?
I don't know if we had any conversation. I know I spent a little bit of time with Theo before we began. But I think the relationship of Ira with the two boys was far closer than anything I had with them.
I had same thing. I had a little time with Theo out in California, and he just had a incredible natural ability to in the film it's a seamless performance from both him and Michael, and they create this this great connection between them that's very real. Whether you're a boy, girl, doesn't matter. That seminal time when you're 12, 13 years old, you're just starting to get some feeling of freedom and independence, and to see that captured in the movie really effectively, especially in the midst of the drama that's unfolding in this story, is quite amazing.
There was one scene where, because the boys pretty much, it's a sort of an equal partnership for almost the entire film, but there is one scene where Theo's character, where our son has a big emotional moment.
As did I.
Sorry, as did you. Yes, as did we all. And Michael's character does not. But you made it even by, after we finished shooting the scene, spending time shooting Michael and what his response was to it, so that it ended up.
I think as a director, you try to be attentive to every face that's in the film. And this film is called Little Men. It certainly centers around the relationship between these two boys. But for me, we're all little men in some way. Certainly you two are in the film, trying to figure out how to be an adult, trying to figure out what is your responsibility as a parent, what is your responsibility as a husband or a wife. And in the beginning of the film, Greg's character loses his father and has to step into that role. And I think I'm 50, I'm in the middle I'm middle-aged, and I think the questions of both how to be young is part of the film and what it is, but also how to be a mature person in the world is really part of the film as well.
Well, how to be a good person, because this is essentially a story about good people who, in the midst of this moment, get to see possibly the wrong that they're doing on the faces of their children. They get to see everything that they're doing in this moment reflected on the relationships that their children are having. And the age of 12 or 13 is such a delicate period of time, not just for children, but I think for parents who are really starting to think about who their children are going to grow up to be. It's that sensitive moment where it's like, oh, you could turn on me at the drop of a dime at this point.
Yeah, there's an important line in the film which Greg's character makes, which is, I think it's hard for children to recognize that their parents are people too. And I think it can take a lifetime till you start to notice.
I love that scene between the kids and you guys in the car, and the way that your character and the way that you handled Greg in that scene. It's such a scene of beautiful writing in the way that the wife kind of knows, or you know with him, that like, all right, let him get it out, and like, all right, time to stop. Let's keep going and drive away. That's such a beautifully written sort of moment of marriage that I don't think we see enough, is when two adults know how to like let it out and then keep going and move on, and we'll continue the life, because life is this long, fluid sort of thing that we keep going. And another movie would have made that fight even bigger, I think.
I love the moment, too, where your character says that your wife is your best friend, because it's another, I think there's a lot of beautiful stuff about marriage.
Yeah,
absolutely. As well as parenthood.
Is this something, when you guys got the script and you got the offer, I'm sure you were familiar with Love is Strange and Ira's work. What were your first thoughts upon reading the script?
You go ahead. You? Oh, well, I just thought this is what I always want to read, and you don't find it very often. I thought it read like a gem. I think it's even more of a gem in its final than I ever imagined, but it did absolutely. I just instantly said, I would love to be a part of this.
My Debbie Downer answer is this. I read it, and we were just having this conversation at lunch, and I loved it. It was very good, very good. But I honestly, and it's testament to Jennifer being terrific. I saw it as a great story, but it was a small story, and I didn't understand some of the machinations of how profound they were until I saw the movie. In fact, we were just talking about the idea that was like there were things in there that I wasn't tracking in the actual script, in the story, that were, I hope, carefully calculated, but it was just, there were things that so came to life in the final movie that I missed.
Well, I think that's part of the collaborative process as well. I mean, the script works as a blueprint in some ways, and I remember our discussions when I went down to meet Greg in Atlanta to talk about the script, and we really discussed the arc of that story of the father. Yeah. And where things begin to change. And I think in that way, the film, it's a very naturalistic film, but it's definitely constructed. And I think by the end, the audience is very connected to really these passionate emotions between these 5 people, 3 parents and 2 children.
And that naturalism that you find is through a little bit of improvisation, right? Or was that mostly with the kids that you use the improvisation technique?
I don't rehearse with my actors, so I think what I end up getting is a kind of emotional improvisation. We talk about the scripts separately. We never do a table read. We never block before we start shooting. And I think that gives, no one knows what's going to happen, and that's really what's exciting about shooting a film and what you can capture with the camera. So there's that kind of emotional improvisation. John Lithgow said, describing working with me, he said that it's kind of challenging because he wants you to be totally free and get all the lines right.
And by the way, here. And I will say that in reading the script that another part of the equation, and you mentioned it earlier, was his previous work. So that while the dynamic seems small, and it's not, to me, or in certain areas where I didn't see how large moments that were happening through there, I guess in many of his films, specifically Love is Strange, there were so many amazing moments in that it just really struck me, and it plays so large.
I mean, I think most stories are about love in many ways, but few artists know how to actually dissect it and really be focused on love. Where do you think your sort of ability or your sort of attention to minute details in regards to love and what distracts and stops love from happening in our lives comes from?
My immediate answer is 17 years of psychoanalysis. I think I have a bent towards trying to understand why things happen, and particularly when I'm directing a film. We were talking about, there's a great line by Jean Renoir, who made a movie called Rules of the Game, and it's a line that I think can kind of give you a lot of guidance as a filmmaker, which is everyone has their reasons. And for me, my job on the set is to really be focused on trying to figure out what everyone's reasons are, even when they're conflicting. So
is that in terms of the characters' reasons, or like the performers' reasons for the choices that they're making?
I'm
as those
talking more about the characters' reasons, though. When you're dealing with actors, you're actually dealing with people. It's like the parents are people too, so are actors. So really you're trying to be attentive to what they bring in terms of their own experience. I will also say that I think whatever I'm able to understand about human nature and love, it's collectively discovered through the collaboration process. So I feel like I make a film with my co-writer, Mauricio Zacharias, my actors, my editors. There's something where we're all trying to understand how to make experience of life as clear as possible. And also, as honest as possible. And I think that's really the goal. I've titled I have a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art where they're showing all the films that I've made, and it's titled "Thank You for Being Honest." For me, that's always what you're aiming for, and I think it's what you get if you cast actors like these two.
Is that a big responsibility when you get on set, that your director's looking for honesty? Is that something, I mean, is every director searching for a real honesty?
No, I don't think every director is searching for real honesty.
Would you like to name those directors?
One of the things that is wonderful, there's so many things wonderful about working with Ira, but one of them is that there is nobody he needs to answer to. He has raised the money himself. There is nobody who is on the phone saying you must incorporate this idea, or it really is, it is purely you.
It's really independent.
And to be part of your palette is
then the movie would be like, well, what if he has an affair with the shop owner? And what if she finds a gun off the wall? Like, it could be something like that.
Absolutely, and you could go off the rails so quickly if it isn't a very, very personal story or a very personal script and a very personal piece of directing, I think. So good for this system to exist. Yeah, right? I mean,
I'm curious about the word personal, because I think your films are referred to as personal a lot. I mean, especially Keep the Lights On, which you have said is semi-autobiographical. But I wonder sometimes if we use the word personal just because there's a minute attention to emotional detail, which I think your films are. And I'm wondering if you sort of attack your films in the same way that many other filmmakers would attack a film, be they not about something so emotional and minute, but about something else. Like, do you consider this to be a personal film for you, or do you consider this to be like, this is the story that I want to tell, and these are the pieces that we need to get everything there?
I identify as a personal filmmaker because I think I originate the stories. I know I'm not hired to come on, and each film, in a way, reflects a moment in which they are made. And my Love is Strange and Little Men are very different than my earlier work because the central relationships are not really conflicted. The conflict is between external things that come from the outside. And I think that reflects really where I am at my life at some point. So I believe that, like a painter, like a novelist, you bring yourself or like an actor. I mean, I think maybe that's the best analogy, is that we bring who we are to the work, and then it becomes something else.
In the moment that you're making it, via writing or directing, editing, it's in that moment. And you've said that this film, I saw in an interview, you said that this film required the most attention than any other film that you've made. Why is that?
I felt really in the editing process. I worked with Molly Goldstein and Afonso Gonzalez as my editors, and I felt like this film, it's a very, I think of it as a kind of modernist work. It needs to be very simple, and yet the choices need to be quite exact. So I found that the editing process demanded a certain kind of precision with the tools that we had to work with.
It's such a, I can't say this enough, it's such a beautiful film, and it's so emotional. I'm curious in regards to the two children, these two boys who are sort of falling into a platonic love with each other, and the parents who have love for each other as well as for their child, the difference between those loves, and if you were sort of, I wouldn't say making a statement, but discussing a fleeting love versus the important love, the one that's going to last the rest of your life versus the one that's going to happen in this moment.
Well, it's interesting. When I show the film and there's an audience, I often ask who in the audience remembers a certain friendship that they lost and that they had, who in this audience has a friendship that they remember that was very, very significant that no longer exists. To me, I think that is, one thing it says it's fleeting, and the other thing it says it's quite profound because you remember it so completely. So I think to record that was something that was important to me. I have to say my best friend from childhood, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. His father ran Stax Records. He was one of two black kids in my all-white elementary school. The other one was Isaac Hayes' son. And the two of them, you know, in a way, they had they were outsiders, but not in our childhood. Because I think one of the beautiful things about kids is kids don't notice difference the way that adults do, and I think that's part of the drama of the story is that the kids have to become aware of how different families have different opportunities.
Yeah, there's a central class struggle to the film.
Yeah, which makes it sound drier than it is. You know, I mean, I do hope that the film, for the most part, I think what happens is the audience gets attached to the story, and the emotions are what sort of take off in the course of the film.
Absolutely. I'm going to open up to the audience for questions. Does anyone have any questions out there?
Hey, I saw in the trailer that it's some of the movie takes place in Brooklyn. I was wondering where in Brooklyn and what part of the, what role it played or what area it played in the story.
Yeah, it's a very Brooklyn film. We were shooting a year ago today. We were still shooting, and we were throughout Brooklyn. I wanted to pick a neighborhood in Brooklyn that wasn't, in terms of the economics, had not fully been gentrified. So it's set in a kind of imaginary Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, out near the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. But we actually ended up shooting in Sunset Park, a little bit in Williamsburg. It's in a Brooklyn that reminds me of the Brooklyn I moved to in '88 when I moved to Carroll Gardens, which was an Italian neighborhood with a Dominican street. I was on Smith Street, and then you had white college kids like myself coming in. And that complexity, it was really the Brooklyn that I was trying to convey.
But the store is on, well, should I not say it? I think I know where it's on.
The store is on Graham Avenue.
Yeah.
Thank you, Treehouse.
Where I
Go
live.
in and, yeah, oh yeah.
Next question.
Hey guys, this movie looks really fascinating. Hope to get to see it. So
August 5th.
So my question's for Greg and Jennifer. So going into this movie, how were you guys able to relate to your characters? Because I'm assuming you guys are parents yourselves too. So you go a little bit into that.
Jennifer plays my wife. It was very easy. I think the relationship between these two is actually a good one. I think there's real love between them, and there is a real struggle going on. And as far as my character, I have daughters. I don't have a son, but so I had to act that part. But I definitely felt the thing that we all feel, who are our parents, that you feel a responsibility, a great responsibility to try to land a few key lessons along the way. And there's a couple of moments in the midst of this story where these things are happening where Brian needs to express to his kid what he thinks is important. And he makes maybe makes a mistake, and he maybe does a good thing along the way too. But it's a tightrope.
I have my son was the same age as Theo, who plays our son in the movie. So my son in real life, I have a son the same age, and one of the things I love about the movie is to see the parents witnessing their child or the two boys just when life, the first kind of subtle brutality of life and of things that inevitably happen starts affecting who he is going to be as an adult. And it's kind of tender and painful to watch.
Can I ask you guys a question as parents? I know that the three of you are parents, but I ask this to everybody that comes on the stage and when parenting comes up. Is it just too much sometimes to be a parent and watch your child grow up? To just watch the span of time over a child's face that you're raising? Is it just too much emotionally every now and then?
Yes. I'm going to go out with a yes on that. You two want to pick up?
Well, luckily it happens on a day-to-day, it happens one day at a time.
You get used to it?
So you don't notice change quite at that level that you pack it in a movie. Mm-hmm. It's happening as you're aging also.
Who was it who said it's like having a child is like having your heart walk around outside your body?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I mean.
That was me.
That was you. It's very good.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hey, all. The movie looks fantastic.
It is.
I believe it, Ricky. When they were playing the trailer, I know I was reliving certain memories of my childhood, and I was wondering, for the three of you up there, when you were growing up, were there particular memories that you experienced that you took with you into adulthood that still has an impact on what you do today?
So many. I mean, I think the thing from this film that's most personal in a way is, remember, I was a theater kid when I grew up. I was involved in a children's theater in Memphis. And I think of that, and we used to put on plays, and we used to hang out and smoke cigarettes and grow up together, a bunch of kids from a bunch of different neighborhoods who got together to make things. And there was a little bit of utopia there that I feel I've never seen recreated in terms of being a truly integrated community. It's something I've tried to achieve in different ways in my life, and I hope for my own kids that they have, that they know kids that are different from them, and that's something that I'm thinking about as a parent.
I love the moments of when you see the boys experiencing being out in the world and autonomous. Just you see them; they're wonderful sections in the movie where you see them just making their own choices out in the world and having freedom. And I think there's a wonderful feeling around 12, 13 where you start being able to do that. And I remember that.
Yeah, I grew up in Greece when I was a kid. About that time, my dad was with the American Embassy, and we arrived in Greece at 13, and I had a friend there who so reminds me. I guess I was the Theo of the friendship, and he was Michael. He was very kind of wise, quick talking, knew which bus to take to get anywhere. And I had as I watched the movie, which, by the way, strangely, Brooklyn reminds me of Athens, very neighborhood-oriented, and for these kids, the ability to get on the bus, ability to get on the train, to experience the area very freely with real independence, that struck a nerve. But also just that friendship of these guys, totally reconnected with my own experience at that age. I won't say who the friend is, though. No.
Guys, I have to let you go, but I just want to say congratulations again on a beautiful film and 2 pitch-perfect performances in a really wonderful film. Thanks so much for being here. When does the movie come out? Excuse me.
It opens on August 5th.
August 5th.
Yeah.
Little Men. Guys, go see it. It's so beautiful. It's such a wonderful film. Thank you so much for being here.